Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite gamer, and I'm here with By Stealth and C. This is a game that I have already covered. I did a playthrough with the prototype before it released, but this is the production version of the game, and I wanted to show that to you guys so you could see the final version of the game since you didn't get to see it in the previous videos. And as always, DVG always has excellent components, and they are definitely worth checking out. Plus, we didn't get to see all of the maps when I covered it previously, so we're going to check those out now. And of course, this is by my boy DT, David Thompson, gotta love him, and Oslo Nicola. I'm gonna mess this up. Sagini. Tell me if I messed that one up. I'm hoping I did well, but excellent game. By Stealth and by C. Or By Stealth and C is the Italian human torpedo attacks during the Second World War. So these guys were effectively human torpedoes that would come in, place explosives, and blow up enemy shipping. Awesome stuff. David's always covering things that are outside the norm. So you're not seeing another game about the Eastern Front, another game about the Normandy beach landings. And don't get me wrong, those games are great. There's a reason we've seen plenty of Bulge games and plenty of games along those lines because they're just so deep and rich. But he's covering the stuff that you don't hear about, the little bits of history that you never knew. Stuff like this, I love it. I love these making games out of it. So here's what we got in the box. Rulebook, as always, first thing we're going to see, and we'll just thumb through this real quick. Very similar to what I was showing before, except this actually is stapled all together. One cohesive rulebook. Pretty much it's very similar to a DVG rulebook. So if you've used one of theirs before, very similar to the standard stuff they pull out. Nice, full color, glossy, all that good stuff. Lists down everything that you need. And gives you a little quick example of playing campaigns and stuff in the game. So rulebook. Then we've got our mission guide. This is all the missions that come with the game, which I believe is 12. It is 12. No, not. I was close. I was in the ballpark. But plenty of missions for you to complete as you go along. Again, I love how they did the campaign system with this game. So it's similar to some of the other solitaire type games that you can play as a one-off, or you can play an extended campaign and see how things progress as you go along, see what your final score is going to be. But you see each one of your scenarios is going to show you what map, how you're setting up your SLCs, the starting points, pilots, all the other good stuff that you're going to need, and then where the enemy shipping is going to be. So plenty of missions in here. And something that's very nice is that they mounted the maps. I always love it when they've got the maps mounted. Let's unfold a couple of these. Let you guys see this. Okay, so this is one of the ones that I didn't get to see when I covered this previously. Where does it say where this is located? Alexandria. Says it down over here. And just by looking at it, my guess is your SLCs are going to start somewhere around the outside over here and then try to get inside the harbor. And it looks like this one only has a single entrance over here. And if you remember from my playthrough, you had to work your way through doing skill checks to make it through things like these harbor nets. And then it's going to have spread throughout the enemy ships, and they're going to be worth varying points. Obviously, the ones farther away and bigger and more dangerous are going to be worth more victory points. Some of these missions will have smaller, like merchant vessels outside that you don't have to sneak in to try to get to, but they're only worth 1 or 2 points. Not really that big of a deal when you can get inside and take out a single warship for 10 points. So sometimes it's better to go for that big boy versus a bunch of little ones. And plus, your guys only carry 1 explosive. So once you use them, you're done. Maybe take a couple of your SLCs, get a couple of quick points, and then have one, make the end run attempt. Again, when it comes to DVG, love how they always have pretty much everything you need to play the game, either on the board or between on the board and a couple of player aids, which By Stealth and C does as well. The harbor defensives, this is basically the enemy turn of the game. You start at the top, you work your way down. And we're going to touch on that when we talk about the cards. But one of the things I really loved about this game is that it wasn't dice rolls. And don't get me wrong, I love dice. Got buckets of dice, love dice, right? have no problem with dice games. But I do like to see something different tried, which was the alert deck with this game. And if I remember right, I think it's 36 cards, and they're numbered 1 through 12. We're going to see it when we look at the cards, but it's effectively a 36-sided die, and it's going to be changed as you go along. You'll remove the lower value cards and make the deck essentially harder as you're playing through the mission, so it can change during gameplay. It can change through the campaign. So when you have a die, you can't change it. You got however many faces, right? And you can say roll 2d6 or 3d6 or d10 or whatever, but what you have is what you have. When you're doing it with cards or tokens, chits, chip pulls, stuff like that, think Enemy Action Ardennes, how the combat is performed there with a massive chip pull. Really, really love that system. By Stealth and C reminds me of it. Now, again, nowhere near that complex, but just its variability. And here we see the other map that I didn't get to see. This is Algiers, and we've got our harbor tucked over here to the left. Your SLCs will probably start here on the right and have to move their way in. Couple of entrance points here to get into the harbor to get the actual targets. We'd have to look at these scenarios themselves to see where everyone's going to be located, but real interesting system. And then down here at the bottom is your time for your mission. And again, harbor defenses on the side. And I believe we've got one more map. Let's take a look. This should be the version that we saw when I did my playthrough. And yes, it is. This was a lot of fun to play through. I'm looking forward to playing a lot more rounds of this game. Just excellent system. Just a real excellent system. This is the Gibraltar map as well. And so this one we have seen. Let's take a look at some of the other final components for the game. Continuing in the box, I already checked this when I talked to some other people. I've got one little printing error in mine, which makes no difference. But it was only my box. I checked with some other reviewers who had got copies, and none of theirs had this issue, so I wouldn't worry about it. It's just a one-off. But you've got sheets for 3 SLCs, SLC 2, 2, and 3. Yeah, mine got 2 of the 2 sheets. It's not a big deal. It really doesn't affect the game in any way. And remember, you're going to put your operator card here, telling you who's piloting it, and this keeps track of their skills, which can go up. There's tokens you can put here that will signify if they've got higher skills. And essentially this is how many dice you're going to roll. So if you got to do a skill check and you need to meet a 4, you would roll 1 on your pilot skill, right? Just 1 die. But if you've got a higher pilot skill, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, then you'll roll that many dice. And you can think of this as the structural, and I'm trying to keep it out of the light, structural stability, and then the warhead of your little submersible torpedo here. So you can have tokens on these that can be taken off if you take damage, and they'll go onto those fault cards, and you'll have to try to do skill checks like repair to bring your SLC back into function. So you might lose the ability to dive or to move, to do whatever is going on, depending on what damage that you take, and you'll have to repair that before you can continue on. And you really want to be careful because you don't want to get caught, because then that's when the enemy patrol craft starts spawning onto the board and they start going after you. So we got a couple of play rates, turn sequence, reference, very nice. Very, very easy flow game to go with. Doing your fault checks, your SLC phase. You can do either 1 or 2 action points based on whether the operator card or stun is ready, and then perform actions using each one of the SLCs. Really, really simple system. I loved how they did this. I like how they've got the fault effect reference, so you can know what it does, like losing your breathing gear, -1 to all dice rolls for stamina, stuff like that. One-sided. And here we have our action reference. And you see things like move, submerged. One of the things I liked about this is that you spent action points, but it was variable. You could spend 1 action point or 2 action points. And if you did it with 2 action points, it was a guaranteed success. But if it was only 1 action point, it wasn't a guaranteed success, and you had to conduct a check. Like a full move here, you would have to conduct a pilot check of 4. In other words, you have to roll 4 if you did not spend 2 action points, but they left that up to you. So there are some times where you might have to risk it. You get in close to the enemy, or you need to get away from the enemy, whatever the case is. So you've got to divide those action points out. Or maybe the case is that you have one thing that you have to guarantee that you're going to succeed on. So you're going to spend the action points towards that instead. Maybe you definitely want to submerge, whatever the case is. Really, really cool system. One of the things I liked about David Thompson, he's always having little innovations like this. Things like the alert deck, variable action points. Many games have action points. You have 2, 3, whatever points, but not many of them do things like this where it's variable and you get to choose how many points something's going to cost, and you have either an easier time or harder time depending on how many points you spend. So really, really love this. Nice player aid. Let's see what other ones we've got. Historic campaign after action report. This is probably something that I would take and scan a copy of, and you can write on. Same thing for our custom campaign operator roster. Another one that you would probably scan and write on just so you keep your original one nice and pristine. And same thing for our custom campaign after action report again. So nice that they've included those. We're getting into our counters, and these are very similar to the ones you would have seen when I was playing the game. Your target ships, the little icon shows how many victory points they're worth. And you see these were the easier targets, the green ones, but you notice that they've got a lower point value, 1 or 2 points, instead of these higher value ones. These were the ones that you're going to find inside the harbors, much harder to get to. You see these only go up to 2, but these 3, 5, 4, just depending on which one that you're going after, 10. So if you can get the big daddy, you're going to get a hell of a lot more points. If I remember correctly, though, the campaign adjusted itself a little bit depending on how many victory points you had going. So maybe you want to think about that before you get a whole bunch. Oh, and these are our tokens for showing what your skill is for your SLCs. So you would place these on top of the places where it said 1. That way you show it's a skill of 2 or 3. I think it says 3. Yep, on the other side. And then the same thing with some more of our targets. A whole bunch of those. Let you guys see that. And then another big one here. 10-pointer, big buck. And then sometimes you'll know what targets are where, and sometimes it'll have you shuffle them up and you won't know what targets are where, and you'll just see this side of the token. So those, and then last sheet here, bunch more targets. Love how it's got plenty of actual real world targets. DVG could have included a lot less of these counters, but I know a lot of people like myself like to see the actual ships named. So that's just a little bonus that they do by adding these counters so we can effectively recreate it. We can go after the real ships. They didn't have to do that. They could have had enough to cover the 3s, the 5s, the 10s, whatever, for any of the missions and just left it that as generic ship. But they take that little step beyond, and I like that they do that. I know it's a little cost to them, but it is appreciated. And then these are your SLCs, which unlike the other ships in the game, these are directional. That's why you've got the arrows on them, so you do have to keep track of what direction they're facing on your map. And these are the enemy patrol craft that can potentially come after you if you get spotted. And the other sides of these guys. So that's all the counters. These are your wooden tokens to represent things like your all your SLC stuff. So white ones for certain spots, blue ones for other spots, reds for your explosives, yellow I think kept track of time, maybe I could be wrong on that one. But these you're going to be placing on those SLC. I can never say that right. Let me grab the sheet. You would be placing these on here, and then if you have a fault, you're going to pull these off. Those are going to go onto the fault card itself. And then if you repair the fault, then you're going to bring the little circle back, place it on there. The numbered ones that I was just talking about, the counters, they go there. So we have those, bunch of wood ones. Our dice for the game, 3d6s, a d8, and a d3, effectively. This has 2 1s, 2 2s, and 2 3s. That's your SLC, SLC die. So if you have to determine which SLC is getting a fault or whatever the case is, that's the die you're going to be rolling for. And then we had a whole stack of our operator cards, and then the other cards that you have that are this size. These effectively improve the enemy, right? That's a good way to think of it. So there's a lot of upgrade cards that you would be putting on the game board. So all those harbor defenses there on the right side, these are going to go on top of those and make them more difficult. They'll have an easier time detecting you or whatever it is. And that's going to be adjusted by your defense level, right? So depending on how many campaign missions you've gone or what the scenario starts at, you're going to have to adjust for that defense level. And then, like I said, you have your operators on this side, trying to keep it out of the glare, and it shows their action points. I think this is their wounded side, actually, so they've only got 1 extra point. Surge tokens, if they have extra skill points like this, pilot skill 2, ops 2, it'll designate that here on the card for them. And you can lose pilots. So if you're playing a campaign game, your pilots do need to try to make it out. And that's harder, especially on the earlier ones, because your SLCs start off weaker in the game and you'll have more faults there. It's an experimental technology, so losing pilots was something that was very likely to happen. So don't get too attached to those first set of guys that you're going to be sending out, because there's a good chance they're not coming back. Our other cards, the bigger ones here, I am going to go ahead and open these because I want to point out those alert cards. Can never find that thing. Here it is. Where is it? Gimpy's guy was having a problem with that too the other day, finding a little tab that's on these things. All right, give me 1 sec. All right, so I literally found it as soon as I pulled away from the camera for a second. All right, let's pull these off. And we see these should be our fault cards. Yep, whole bunch of different fault cards. And your SLCs are going to improve as you go along. So you see how some of these say prototype? Well, that's going to change, and you're going to have different series of SLCs as the game goes on. 100 series, 200 series, whatever SSB is. So they're going to improve as you go, and you're going to switch out these fault cards depending on what SLC that you're using. Let's get through all these fault cards. Where are the others? Are these all the faults? Yep. I guess the alert ones are the small ones. And the only other ones that we have here besides the fault are the forward positioning cards. So this is basically the start cards, right? The ones that tell you what's going on at the beginning, what starts, what fault checks you've got to make, things like that, what the target location is, so what map you're on. Let's take and open up this pack real quick. I want to show you guys those alert cards. All right, so real quick, you see the harbor defense cards that I was talking about. Things like searchlight, patrol craft, their responses, anti-torpedo nets, the shore-based mortar, underwater diving team, patrol craft response submerged, underwater diving team, and some of your maps, some of your scenarios, these won't be in effect. So they won't have these defenses. They're going to get added as, again, that defense level goes up. I'm going to show you guys the pilot cards real quick. And let's see. Yep. We've got some generic ones. Put those here. And then we got our named pilots. See, it shows 2 action points, +1 to the repair action, award 1 BP at the end of a mission if captured, +1 to escape, because like I said, you've got escape, extra surge tokens. So a lot of different guys, different skills. And then it is awesome that you can create your own guys if you want for your missions. And finally, the thing that I definitely wanted to show you guys, and I know this is a small thing, but it's just so neat that he puts it in. Like I said, this is like just one big die, all right? You're going to be drawing from this deck when you're doing the harbor defenses, and depending on what number you draw is going to determine whether or not they're failing or succeeding at the things that's going on, their defenses. And like I was pointing out, you can see that the cards are numbered 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're going to remove some of those lower numbered cards as the game goes on. So they're likely to fail at first because there's a lot of lower number cards, but then you're going to start pulling these out. That's what I'm talking about. You're effectively changing the faces of the die. You're making it to where you're more likely to roll that 4, more likely to roll a 5, just depending on how things go. The game's going to change. It's going to get harder. And it kind of puts you on another form of a little bit of a time limit. You want to go quicker because you're going to have a better chance with this deck. And then number 12 has a special reminder on it to remove the lowest number cards from the discard pile, max 6. In other words, you only remove up to that number. You're not going to keep going until you've only got number 12 and you can fail. And then you shuffle the entire deck when you draw that 12. So that's your signifier of when you're going to be adjusting this deck. Just neat system. Loved it. Love this. Real good idea coming from. But anyway, that is by Stealth and C. Make sure you check out the playthrough that I did showing you guys how the game works. Definitely check it out if you want something that's solitaire, showing a different aspect of World War II. Really neat submarine, human torpedo type game. Love the way that they implemented this. And as always, DVG has great components. Never anything to complain about when it comes to the components to their games. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them down below and I will get them answered for you. You guys take care. I will see you in the next one.